by removing better creatures, keeping the battalion from triggering. Nathan, no 2-drop it seems, just goes for the Dryad Militant, or he's being really conservative and wants to keep Brave the Elements up, which I see that card in his hand as well.
So in Beatdown Mirrors, it's very rarely 2 ships passing in the night, assuming the players can block one another's creatures. And with Lundquist on the draw, already a little bit on the back foot, he's going to be trying to play more of a defensive game, try to block and give him some time to deploy some of his threats here.
Yeah, we see him making a decision point this turn. He can cast Precinct Captain and play a Mutavault untapped, or he can use a Mutavault and one of his lands already in play to cast a Daring Skyjack, I believe, or an Azorius Rester, and then he also has a Soldier of the Pantheon, so he can decide between Precinct Captain or 2 creatures that are both worse than Precinct Captain, basically.
Or he can also play as Ajani this turn and plus it because Nathan on board cannot kill Ajani.
Looks like he's going to opt for the 2-creature plan, try and get ahead of what Nathan's doing.
And I really like Lundquist trying to take a defensive position here. He's going to attack with both.
Trades his Boros Elite for a Brave the Elements, which probably is fine. That's one of the least destructive trades that he can make against that particular spell.
Oh, I'm sure Lundquist is thrilled with that.
Banisher Priest slowing Ben down.
Banisher Priest a pretty huge trump to have access to in game 1 in the mirror match here.
Yeah, there are not a lot of ways to remove it in most of these decks, and Ben specifically decided to eschew Lightning Strikes, so he doesn't have any in his main deck.
Yeah. But he still has a lot of action in his hand here. Let's see, Precinct Captain.
And he's got the option between a Rester and it looked like a Dryad Militant.
He can also say go with just his mutable back on defense too. What's attractive about that is it means that he no longer has to worry about Brave inside of combat if he wants to make a block.
Yeah, he can again keep it down to just a 1-for-1 at most, assuming the Skyjack would ever block. Looks like he goes for the Arrestor.
I assume we're going to target the Militant here because Lundquist is very happy to trade with either the Sovereign or the Banisher Priest. So if Nathan wants to attack and trade with either one of those cards, that's totally fine.
And you're exactly right. Nathan's Dryad Militant does in fact get arrested, and looks like he has a Boros Charm and a Boros Elite in his hand to continue to add presence to the board. But whether he wants to actually go about attacking this turn, he can use the Boros Charm to get double strike. In this case, basically just first strike to let him run through that Daring Skyjack.
The problem from Nathan's side of the board right now is that Precinct Captain's likely to go unchecked here, and an unchecked Precinct Captain is it generates a huge edge. In a matchup that's all about 2-1 and 3-1 creatures, something that makes a 1-1 every turn is quite powerful.
Yeah, so he decides not to burn his Boros Charm on that attack, and he's just sitting back.
So Lundquist now with a plethora of options. The Ajani also gives him the line potentially of just jumping and double striking the Precinct Captain, which generates 2 tokens, and puts Nathan in a position where he's kind of compelled to attack because he can't let Ajani go unchecked, but any alpha strike he makes is going to incur some serious losses. You can also play a little bit more conservatively, simply put a counter on his Precinct Captain, which is still quite positive for him here.
Yeah, and it makes it close to unbeatable in combat. Nathan would no longer be able to even block to kill it.
Yeah, so
that's what he does.
Lundquist is going to take a slightly more conservative route, but this is still a very powerful sequence.
Yep, and that Soldier token should be coming into play tapped for the Imposing Sovereign. But Ben's still, quite well preserved with a Mutavault, a Daring Skyjack, and an Azorius Arrestor on D.
So Nathan, again, he has Boros Charm in hand, so he can kind of freely alpha strike because he can give his team indestructible. And curious to see how he's going to distribute his attacks amongst what's coming at Ajani and what is coming at Lundquist.
Yeah, he's going to attack here, and I feel like he probably wants to send Skyjack at Ajani, and then as well as like Sovereign and Militant probably, and then everything else at Ben.
So Lundquist needs to make blocks where he protects himself against Brave the Elements and Boros Charm blowing him out, but also the blocks have to be juicy enough to induce one of those tricks out of Nathan if he has it. So
Right.
he needs to find the balancing act between inducing Nathan to use a trick if he has one, while not losing maximum value in the event that Nathan does.
This is one of those interesting situations where, just Brave the Elements, like you wouldn't use it to run the falter effect. Like you would actually be trying to scoop creatures in combat with it. And Ben, we see, makes the most conservative of blocks, just putting the Arrestor on the Banisher Priest to trade with that Boros Charm if Nathan's willing to blow it, and he's not.
So
It looks like, I'm guessing everything went into Johnny based on this combat. Nathan just wants to make sure the Planeswalker dies, doesn't want to just shrink it.
yeah, just really tight play from Lundquist. Just very conscious of what the situation was, what the risk and rewards are, and
By not attacking Ben at all, Nathan's kind of opened himself up to being taken advantage of by a conservative block like that. If some of those creatures were going at Ben's face, he might be getting lower in damage. Then the Boros Charm becomes a threat both to his life total and his board.
yes.
It's hard to defend from it on both fronts, but because he gets to still sit at 16, and his board is even looking better than Nathan's at this stage, now it's gotten a lot more interesting. That Boros Charm's ability to clock Ben is limited both now because Ben doesn't necessarily need to block. He can actually just attack for more damage. And also, his life's not as threatened. He doesn't have to worry about the 4 damage.
And Lundquist drew Boros Charm of his own, so now he has a lot of flexibility, both if he can use the indestructible mode, if Nathan does the same thing inside of combat, and now also Nathan's life total is pretty important too, because Lundquist can threaten lethal in not that long. He's got a lot of pressure on the board already.
I almost feel like a Boros Charm draw from Ben was kind of like sort of a double-edged sword, though, because now he might be incentivized to make like so many different plays as opposed to just jamming. And I really like attacking. And it looks like Ben agrees. He just wants to battle.
And you see him leave the soldier back on defense because that just increases the opportunity cost of attacking with Dryad Militant, although he's still debating here. So he gives up a point to potentially make Nathan's attacks far more awkward, but Lundquist is going to sit back. Appears with
just soldier token.
Okay.
I imagine he plans to wash, rinse, repeat his blocks from the previous turn under the assumption that Nathan has something like a Boros Charm or Brave the Elements, with the soldier token probably going on Imposing Sovereign this time around. Ben's basically going to just see how many times is Nathan willing to alpha into a chump attack before he burns his trick. And now that he himself has a Boros Charm, he can even protect against it if need be.
Yep.
Nathan on 7, dead to the Boros Charm in Ben's hand if he can't kill Ben or find some way to prevent a daring Skyjack from coming over the top.
And it looks like a Johnny was the draw for Nathan.
That's not going to do it. So he'll need something real creative here, or we're going to find ourselves going to game 2 with Ben up a game. Plays the Ajani. That's basically best possible thing Ben can see, because now he knows there's really not a trick Nathan can realistically have that prevents that Skyjack from coming over. Is someone going to be playing Shock over Lightning Strike in this deck? That doesn't seem very likely.
Right. And, at the risk of repeating myself, I really feel like Lundquist has navigated this game very well. He's just played conservatively when that was called for, and has opened it up and shifted gears when he had an edge and just drew Boros Charm.
Yeah, he really had the flexibility, and because his life total remained high enough that he didn't have to worry about getting counterattacked for lethal, he was able to play deftly around his opponent's Boros Charm. And uses his own to dispatch Nathan, sending them to the sideboard.
I know that Lundquist absolutely despises Boros Charm and any sort of anything resembling a creature mirror. Those are going to be the first 4 things to get out of the deck. He has quite a few powerful sideboard cards to bring in. He has 4 copies of Banisher Priest. He has 2 copies of Glare of Heresy, 2 copies of Mizzium Mortars, and a Firemane Avenger, all potentially excellent here.
All very powerful cards, to be sure. Moving over to Nathan's sideboard, his sideboard actually looks very similar. All told, he has 2 Fiendslayer Paladins, 2 Frontline Medics, 2 more Boros Charms. He's only running 2 in the main. 2 Glare of Heresy, a Pacifism, 2 Burning Earths, and 4 Boros Reckoner. He's already got those Banisher Priests in the main deck, so his like anti-creature 3, I imagine he brings in mostly against red decks, is Boros Reckoner.
Yeah.
Those decks have a lot of trouble removing this creature. He can board his Banisher Priests out. Here, he doesn't really want to overload his deck with 3-drops because they're not that great in the matchup. As we saw, he got kind of stuck on mana when he drew a 3-drop with a 2 in his hand, only had 4 lands. He'll certainly be bringing in the glares and the pacifism to complement what he's already got going on in there. And I imagine maybe some of these Boros Reckoners, because the 2 Ajani and the 2 Spears are not ideal, and as he has his own Boros Charms, he'll probably want to get rid of those as well.
I actually think that pacifism is pretty poor against White Weenie because of Brave the Elements.
Sure.
That's already a critical card in the matchup, and then pacifism is just another thing that makes it worse if you have it. I know that some people bring it in just because answering Precinct Captain early is the most important thing. When someone gets run out of the gym in the mirror match, it almost always involves Precinct Captain going unchecked. And in that game, it was ultimately what gave Lundquist the edge. He got a Precinct Captain to play. Nathan didn't have his own, nor enough of an early advantage to push through it. So some people like to bring in pacifism as another answer, but I think because of Brave the Elements, it's not a card you should be bringing in the post-board games.
All right, that's fair. As a singleton, I see some credit. He also has Fiendslayer Paladin if he wants access to another first striking 2-power creature to kind of supplement things. Honestly, it seems like he doesn't really have as many powerful cards as he'd like to bring in. Ben's, got the reverse. His main deck is geared against other matchups with a ton of cards to bring in here, whereas Nathan's main deck already kind of geared toward this matchup, but still has a few more bricks in the main than he has sideboard options.
Yeah, I would imagine that Lundquist is going to be cutting certainly his 4 Boros Charms, his 2 frontline medics, and a bunch of his Dryad Militant type creatures, the 1-drops, because the games become longer and more attrition-y. You want more high-impact cards.
And Militant against Soldier of the Pantheon is especially mediocre.
Yes.
So.
And for the more powerful 3-drops, especially Banisher Priest and Fire Maiden Avenger, and more red removal.
Yeah, it looks like Ben's sideboard leaves him with a bit of an edge because he just has more removal post-board. Not by a lot, but by a noticeable amount.
And Fire Maiden Avenger is actually quite good in the mirror match.
Yeah, if you untap with a Fire Maiden Avenger in play and, the prerequisite 2 other creatures to attack with, it should be very, very difficult to lose. And considering the deck has access to Mutavault, not to mention just swarms of white creatures, it should be a pretty easy situation to engineer, assuming you can run your opponent out of removal spells.
Yeah. It's also a 3/3, which matches up really well against Precinct Captain and friends. So.
Yeah, very true. I know that Ben said he played the Fire Maiden Avenger in Albuquerque and that it was awesome for him, led to him deciding to run it back today.
Yeah.
Clearly has paid off. He's accrued a 7-1 record.
Yeah, it used to be War Leader's Helix in that slot, but against similar decks, I think the Avenger is much more powerful.
I like to shoot for the stars in those situations. I don't like to settle for my War Leader's Helix. I want a Lightning Helix every turn.
Well, Helix is much better against red decks.
Oh, of course, yeah.
In white creature mirrors, Avenger is excellent.
Looks like keeps from both players.
Well, Lundquist appears to be debating this one.
Yep, still thinking.
Looks like a 1-lander. I think he might just be on 1 planes.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, but clearly tempted.
Oh, I like me a 1-lander.
Me too. I love him. Can't get enough. We see Nathan has kept in at least some of his militants, leads with one on turn 1, and Ben keeping apparently a 1-lander with no 1-drop.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of arresters and glare.
Mm-hmm. Well, we see, he keeps this hand that's got one of his sideboard cards, which automatically increases the value of the hand in and of itself. And he does find the second planes right on top. Now he's got a lot of options. He has arresters, he has glare, he has Precinct Captain.
I think it's Battle of Wits time. He's just going to arrest. Okay.
All right. Soldier of the Pantheon under arrest. I assume Precinct Captain is your Battle of Wits equivalent here. Untap, control, with it under your control, win the game.
Correct.
Probably he's a little fearful of a Banisher Priest ruining his fun there and just leaving him taking 6 damage and getting too far behind.
He also may want to just trade with the removal that Nathan theoretically can have.
Mm-hmm.
That's another incentive. Just bleed out the removal with this kind of stuff, and then eventually get to stick up Precinct Captain.
Imposing Sovereign, a little bit of a punishment on that line now because now none of his creatures can actually trade on defense. He'll probably just be priced into arresting again so that he can untap with Arrestor and play another guy. Or he just goes for the Glare. Burning the Glare on the Sovereign kind of burns because now he doesn't have an option against new Banisher Priest, but Nathan has demonstrated he lacked a 3rd land at the time, so that makes the Glare maybe a little easier to part with. Mm-hmm. Finds the 3rd land now, though, and casts 2 creatures It's going to be tough for Ben to claw out now. We see Precinct Captain, a.k.a. Battle of Wits, and that puts Nathan to 8 power on the field against Ben's 12 life. Ben will be hard-pressed to fight back.
He's going to arrest the Precinct Captain here and
Yep.
make a land drop.
Can't afford the shock land, doesn't have a 1-drop to play with it in any way. And he'll be trading off and going to 8 here, assuming Nathan allows him to. But I smell that Banisher Priest landing.
Yeah.
That'll put Ben down to 6 life.
The risk on this line, I think, is if that Banisher Priest gets Banisher Priest, then Ben can actually start to claw out of this potentially.
Right. Has a Mutavault. And yep, we see Ben's Banisher Priest comes down, takes Banisher Priest, Azorius Arrestor, no doubt hitting the Precinct Captain again.
And I think Nathan has no action. I think he just has a land in his hand.
I agree.
So.
He's out, but he can attack in here. He'll get in 2 damage, and Ben will probably just trade off both creatures and let the Banisher Priest come back, removing nothing.
Yes, that's a fairly attractive. Keep his life total reasonably high.
Yeah, looks like... I think that's the line he considers. If he blocks with the Banisher Priest at all, he's almost just certainly has to block with the Arrestor. So, yeah, that's exactly what happens here. Drops down to 4 life, but does return a creature to Nathan. Has to just hope Nathan's all out, and he is rewarded.
Another Ajani the draw.
Once more under arrest. Precinct Captain, clearly a violator at this
Yes.
point. Like,
Another land for Nathan.
wow, Ben might just be coming back out of this. It's
Bonesaw.
still going to be dicey. Any Brave the Elements at almost any point is still going to be just almost game on the spot. But
this is an incredible rally. Mizium
wow,
Mortars the
Mizium
draw.
Mortars continues to pull out. I think we just go for the Mortars on Captain and get in with our Captain here, right?
There's an argument for Ajani and just jump the Precinct Captain too.
Yeah, but I guess that still leaves us dead to Brave, and as long as we have that Mutavault on defense, we can avoid that scenario, right?
No, he's got. Yes, this is a hedge against Brave, I guess.
Because if we untap from this position, I think we're in pretty strong shape, especially as soon as we hit a 5th land. We always have the Mutavault. It's a bummer that the Banisher Priest can profitably block our 1/1s. Otherwise, we could just, throw ourselves into the red zone with abandon.
Soldier of the Pantheon the draw for Nathan.
Now he's stuck in that mode where you just play a guy, hope I draw a Brave the Elements, or if he's left them in, Boros Charm.
And Lundquist with so many Ajanis in his hand can start setting up some really awesome turns too.
Yeah, he can actually go for the neg immediately if he wants, and then play another one next turn plus, or he can just start plussing, set up a neg, get in for a bunch of damage. He can get multiple double strikes going in the same turn, even.
Yeah, quadruple strike. 2 times 2.
And he does have that 5th land to turn on Mutavault. However, it's not enough to save him now. A Brave the Elements will still be lethal.
Well, I believe that appears to be a lethal Ajani.
That
as
does.
He can give flying and double strike to one of his creatures.
Nathan does, in fact, it appear, aim it at Banisher Priest, and then he sends it in. Ben
And
picks
that's
him
game.
up. A valiant
Wow.
effort, but overcome by Nathan's number of outs.
And you saw that in that game, Azorius Arrestor was really powerful for Lundquist.
Yeah, he was very significant, especially as a way to fight back against A, being on the draw, and B, getting Imposing Sovereign.
Yeah, Lundquist actually came up to me in between rounds and was asking me if he thought he should be drawing in the Boros Mirror in the sideboarding games. Because he can just fend off for enough time with Azorius Arrestors. I feel like you can't go down that line because the early damage matters so much because of Brave the Elements. You can just die. But there is an argument once you have a lot of Azorius Arrestors in your deck to go second and just, feint and dodge a little bit, allow your board to develop, and then start deploying your Ajanis and other 3s. Because in the post-board games, both decks are adding so many 3 and 4 mana spells.
Mm-hmm.
That every Boros deck goes down to, bringing in a bunch of frontline medics and, Boros Recorders, additional Ajanis, potentially additional Spears. Those are the sideboard plans. And so, but you're still only playing 22 lands or what have you. So you often will miss your third land drop, and that can be disastrous in these post-board games because you have so many threes. So there is some merit to drawing. Again, I still think ultimately it's correct to play, but certainly Lundquist having access to Azorius Arrestor makes it potentially even more compelling to draw first.
Yeah, Ben perhaps revisiting his consideration of that one land keep. No doubt wishing, God, if it's just a 1/1 drop, then maybe that whole game just gets undone if he just finds one on turn 1. And that also, I'm sure, affected his decision to keep it in the first place. Not only was a land a very good draw, but any 1-drop off the top, since he was on the draw, would have been a huge hedge.
Yeah, I mean, he drew fairly well.
Oh, sure, he definitely did. But, certainly likely going to be thinking that decision over. Unless he wins this game, then he'll probably pay it never a second thought.
I think I kind of like the keep there. The upside on that hand's so huge if he draws a white source of mana in the first couple turns. It can even be Mutavault because he has so many arrestors to give himself time.
I like keeping hands that are speculative like that when all of the cards are the cards you want, Like if you were going to mulligan to 5 and see 3 or 4 of your best cards in the matchup, you're totally fine with that over a mediocre 7.
Yeah.
And the same principle holds for like weak 7s, quote-unquote weak 7s, that have a fatal flaw. Assuming you can get out of that flaw, you just have a ton of powerful cards.
Yeah, I mean, Lundquist had a Precinct Captain, multiple Arrestors, and a Ajani in that opening
And a Glare.
And a Glare, so you can't ask. Those are all of his best cards.
If you randomly shuffled any of those cards away for a Plains, the hand would be a Snap Keep. So it's pretty tempting to assume you're going to find one in the top 2, or at least a 1-drop to slow down the opponent.
Yeah. If you're gonna mulligan hands like that, why even show up?
Yeah.
If you're
gonna mulligan hands like that, then you need to be sleeping up mono black or something.
Why are you even showing up to the tournament? So Lundquist presumably will be on the play here. Although I don't know, this might be...
he may have decided to experiment against your advice. See who blinks first. Looks like Ben announces the keep first and then Nathan mulligan, so yeah, it's Ben on the play.
So what do you think about Lundquist's build with the 4 Azorius Arrestor, no imposing Sovereign?
I gotta be honest, I didn't think Azorius Arrestor would make it to the big times.
Yeah.
I've been wrong about a lot of cards. That wasn't one of the ones I expected to be wrong about. It's pretty interesting to watch it play out. I have a lot of respect for the Boros deck, having seen its game against mostly the control decks. I really think it's a more powerful creature-based strategy than a lot of people give it credit for. And I would rather sleep this deck up than say something like the red aggro deck or the red devotion deck, I think. Especially in this world that's getting defined by mono black and all of its, willing to enter into attrition. Having something like a Ajani against mono black is huge. A way to turn any creature into a significant threat. I really like that.
Yeah, I think, I've said a couple times on the broadcast, I think Mutavault's the most powerful card in Standard. I think this is the best between being an attacking deck in general and having so many battalion effects. This is the most powerful deck most powerful use of Mutavault in the format.
Yeah, we see matching Soldier of the Pantheon starting off here. And it looks like Ben's got the potential to go one better. He has another Soldier of the Pantheon in his hand, and I believe another 1-drop to go with it. Boros Elite, yep. And he's going to pass turn with the ability to turn on the Battalion on his Soldier next turn. Nathan, only a second Soldier, also passes, going to have to defend himself, likely by trying to trade Soldiers. Pretty dangerous, though.
This attack might have been a little rough because Brave the Elements is really risky here, but now, the Arrestor.
The Arrestor to the rescue. Even a Brave is just a 1-for-1, and the Arrestor entering play will also allow Ben to once again have Battalion on the next turn, even if he loses a creature to Brave. And it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. Ben loses 1 Soldier, gets in 5 damage, has a Scryland to follow. Things appear to be going swimmingly for him.
Has red mana as well, a Glare in hand. A lot of really good tools.
Yeah. Sends the card to the bottom, and it's on Nathan. He's under pressure. He's got 2 Banisher Priests in his hand, one of them a fresh draw off the top, but he's going to have to take some Shockland damage to get that 2/2 into play. And as we know, Ben's just going to likely Glare it, assuming that that's an advantageous play for him.
I wonder what Nathan's debating here.
Perhaps which creature to Glare. Once he takes the shock, he's kind of just committed to the Banisher Priest. And yeah, he does decide to go with Soldier of the Pantheon.
So Lundquist with land, Daring Skyjack.
Yeah, he has, I believe, land, Daring Skyjack, Glare in his hand, so he You can exile the Banisher Priest, try to set up an attack on the next turn, but this board's not really materializing into anything especially favorable. Without a Brave or something to let him start pushing through, he's just going to be ramming his creatures into trades. Looks like he's going to go for the more conservative, just the Skyjack and send the turn, hold the Glare, see what develops on Nathan's turn.
Mutavault the draw for Nathan.
Good draw for Nathan. He can now play another Banisher Priest and hold out Brave the Elements. I believe he has a second copy in his hand. And that'll put Ben in a real bind. The Sorcery Speed Glare, not one of your best weapons against Brave the Elements.
And now both of these players just kind of looking for their haymakers. Ajani, Precinct Captain. Lundquist is in a spot now where his own Brave the Elements is pretty powerful, as he has a lot of pressure on the table.
Looks like Nathan will go with a second Banisher Priest and then pass the turn. Doesn't want to trade any of these guys off. Not attacking here also gives him a lot more defense against a Brave, but I think I would kind of, I don't know, I feel like I would be willing to attack. Maybe that's too greedy, I don't know.
And really, I really like that play a lot from Nathan. Just no hesitation,
Yes.
just immediately exiled his Banisher Priest. Really can lead Lundquist to believe that there's no Brave the Elements in his hand.
Yeah, if I were Ben, I would be hard-pressed to assume my opponent had a Brave the Elements when he just immediately exiles his creature without even picking up the card or thinking about anything. So, good focus on that one.
That's a play right out of Lundquist's own playbook. So now he has to think, am I getting trapped by this, or does he really have nothing? Because this could be the whole tournament right here. If he makes a too aggressive attack into Brave the Elements, that could just be the ball game. But
he arrests Soldier and passes, does not attack. Nathan's on 13. Ben perhaps willing to make the fight come to him. Nathan doesn't have a creature that can attack, without trading, so Ben can once again wash, rinse, repeat the style of attack we saw him make before. Oh, this might give Ben an opening. Nathan taps out of white mana for Boros Reckoner, just a Mutavault up. So, assuming Ben can peel away to actually handle that Boros Reckoner, might be able to make something develop.
And I think Lundquist is also fine being in a holding pattern and just letting the boards develop, because he has much more inevitability because of Brave the Elements. Nathan is much lower. He doesn't have to worry about Nathan killing him with Brave the Elements for a very long time, and so he's happier to let the board develop. Though that changes now with Boros Reckoner, as Nathan can start going on the offensive with the Reckoner and possibly shortening the window that Lundquist has.
Also worth noting is it looks like Nathan, the Boros Reckoner in play, Soldier of the Pantheon, not digging him out.
So,
is that another Banisher Priest? Looks a bit like one.
That's a Glare in his hand.
Oh, Glare. About the same difference for Nathan, and his Boros Reckoner can safely go on the offensive. He's going to hold on to his Glare, wants to save it for one of the problem cards. Precinct Captain, Ajani, another Banisher Priest from Ben.
Yep. That Reckoner is really threatening, as it's really important for Nathan to have some sort of clock that he can attack with freely and not trade to allow this Brave to potentially shorten the game.
Yep. Previously, Ben had Nathan's lower life total in the top of his own deck to pressure Nathan, but now it's Ben who's under the actual pressure. He's the one who needs to find something to break up a stalemate that favors Nathan. He does find Ajani, which is not nothing.
No.
It's going to be putting a counter somewhere. Question is where. He's got a bunch of 1-toughness creatures in play, which is not ideal when facing down 2 Soldier of the Pantheons that would happily give their lives for the cause. Decides to go with the Skyjack, the highest power on the board.
And the one most important to have large if there's an Alpha Strike.
Yep.
And it looks like Lundquist is going to be making a move here. Probably sending Mutavault, Boros Elite, and Daring Skyjack.
Yep.
So this is this is a aggressive move by Lundquist that also doesn't ruin him in the event that Nathan has Brave the Elements, because only the Boros Elite gets eaten up. The Mutavault isn't a colored card, so nothing to be done there with Brave. The Skyjack is flying, and so this is kind of the best of both worlds for Lundquist.
Yeah, the Mutavault can trade off with anything on Nathan's side, and Nathan, it appears, is going to be trading off his own Mutavault for it, just interesting. And then he can double block on the Boros Elite and use the Brave if he wants to just basically kill Boros Elite, but more importantly, preserve his soldiers, which that's what it looks like he does.
And getting rid of that Mutavault is actually subtly pretty important here, as it's one of Nathan's best protections against Brave the Elements from Lundquist.
Yeah, I think Nathan's willing to trade off against Ben's Mutavault, though, because now that he untaps, he has that Glare of Heresy in hand. He can use that to exile the Daring Skyjack. That'll remove all of Ben's relevant threats basically from the board, as he then can attack the Ajani. He can also just exile the Ajani and decide to deal with everything else in another way. He is on 9, though, so I feel like you just want to get that 4-power creature off the board.
Nathan with a land drawn, so he's going after Azorius Arrestor. And I guess he just is intending on sending everything at Ajani.
Now he has to probably kill the Ajani, otherwise he's dead to a Brave. And yeah, I imagine this is all going at Ajani. Ben's just going to bin it.
Not an unreasonable attack as it strips Battalion, although I would have sent the Banisher Priest and not the Soldier, because blocking with the Banisher Priest is so bad here, and Nathan is almost priced into blocking.
Sure, I get that. Ben just sends the Arrestor, sort of daring Nathan to block. That means he probably drew a creature, so he wants to get Nathan into 7 and then can play the creature, and that's exactly what he does now.
If Nathan flips his attacks last turn, for example, he could just trade there.
Right.
And all the right now, trading is so powerful for Nathan because the primary concern he has is Brave the Elements. Boros Reckoner is going to dominate this game in the long term, assuming that Nathan doesn't get basically killed out of nowhere. But now, taking that hit, it means Brave the Elements is lethal, and now means another Ajani is lethal, as giving Flying and Double Strike to the Daring Skyjack is a kill. Something as subtle as that could make a big difference in this game, depending on what Lundquist's draw steps are.
Can make or break, and it looks like Nathan has another creature. I can't tell what it is. It looks like it might be a Fiendslayer Paladin or a Boros Elite, but he's just going to send in his Soldier of the Pantheon's creatures. He's very willing to lose, keeping his blockers that are really good at that job on D. Ben trades the Boros Elite because it's not doing much. I think Ben's probably just thinking he wants to preserve the most number of outs. Ajani obviously just kills in combination with the Daring Skyjack, but if he throws away the Boros Elite, then a Brave the Elements is no longer lethal.
Yes.
So he's limiting himself down to just 3 Ajanis for outs if he makes this block, and that's what he does.
But he's giving himself quite a bit more time.
Right.
And there's Fiendslayer
Paladin. Well, now it's going to be pretty much now or never for Ben, as once Nathan gains 2 life, Ben will be in trouble. I'm going to guess that wasn't an Ajani he drew, but he's surveying the board. Looks like he passes turn. If it was a Brave the Elements, might still be able to make something happen and throw a creature in front of the Fiendslayer Paladin, get pro-white, and fend off the gain 2 and give himself another draw step at Ajani while removing the life-linking threat from his path. So it'll be interesting to see how Nathan addresses this particular combat. Banisher Priest, that creates a nice safety net, and the third one, obviously, a bit of a tilt in the matchup to have this many Banisher Priests.
Yeah, Lundquist still without any of his priests.
Yeah, the 3-0 ratio is definitely distorting it, and Ben's hand are 2 lands, which leaves him extending the hand in defeat. Wow, tight fight.
Yep. So Nathan McWilliams wins 2-1 in the red-white aggro mirror, likely locking up a top 8 berth for himself. For Lundquist now, 2 losses and probably just playing out the stretch next round.
Yeah, I know Ben's looking for a top 32 finish at minimum, I believe, to qualify him for some number of buys, I think, at the Las Vegas Invitational.
Yeah,
this
I'm not sure what his point threshold situation is at, but he has quite a string of good performances lately.
Yep.
He has an invitational top 8 this season. He has an open win, and so it wouldn't surprise me to see him that he's currently kind of on the bubble of buys for the invitational.
Yeah, I think this would be for one buy. That's my layman's guess.